In this video, we will build a Snowflake pipeline that pivots data for aggregation. Let's see its capabilities and understand how it works. This pipeline uses three processors: a pivot processor that performs a Snowflake pivot, turning unique values in a field into new fields and aggregating the results. It also uses an aggregate processor that performs aggregate calculations, and a union processor to merge two streams of data before writing to a Snowflake table. Let's see the aggregate and pivot processors in action. First, we need to go to the Snowflake cloud. Proceed to the Worksheet section of the Snowflake platform. Open a new SQL worksheet and select the previously created warehouse, database, and schema in the top of the UI. Notice that your warehouse should be activated. Now we need to create a table called monthly sales. Run the following query. You can see that our monthly sales table has been successfully created. It has several fields: employee's ID, amount, and month. We have also added multiple values to these fields. Now let's run this query to pivot around the amount column to sum the total sales per employee for January, February, and March. Observe the output in the results window below. Now that this has been done, we are ready to start creating our Snowflake pipeline that will pivot the data for aggregation. Move over to Control Hub. Proceed to Build and Pipelines. Once you are on the Pipelines page, click Create a Pipeline. You may title it Data Pivoting Pipeline. You can also give it a description: My Data Pivoting Pipeline. Select the transformer for Snowflake engine type and blank pipeline. Click Next. Keep the defaults. Finally, select Save and Open in Canvas. From the empty canvas, you can start building a pipeline. Add a Snowflake table. Scroll down the Select Origin menu and pick the Snowflake table. Move over to the General tab. Title your origin Raw Sales. Next, move over to the Table tab and specify the table name as Monthly Sales. In order to perform data pivoting, we will need to add the pivot processor. Select it from the Processor drop-down menu, and notice the origin automatically connects to the processor. You may title it Pivot Sales. Move to the Pivot tab. When you configure the pivot processor, you specify the field to pivot as well as the pivot values. So we will have to add several settings here. Set the column to pivot to month. Check the Auto-Calculate Pivot Values. Set the column to aggregate to amount. Finally, set the aggregation field to sum. Now add an aggregate processor. Select the aggregate processor from the Processor drop-down menu. Under the General tab, give your processor a name Aggregate Monthly Totals. Under the Aggregate tab, add 4 aggregations. In the first aggregate function, set the aggregate functions to sum. Set the aggregate column to January. Provide a more detailed name in the output column name, such as January_total. Add aggregations for the other 3 months. Next, add a union processor. Connect the output of the pivot processor to the first input and the output of the aggregate processor to the second input. Move to the General tab and title this processor Combine Columns. Click the Union tab. Select Union for the operation and select Pass All Columns in the Column Handling field. Once this has been done, we can add the last element to our pipeline, a destination. Select the Snowflake Table Destination from the Destination drop-down menu. You may title it Total Sales. Proceed to the Table tab and set the table name to Aggregated Total Sales. Next, set the Write mode to Append to Table as it is by default. Keep the rest of the settings unchanged. Now we are ready to preview our pipeline to check it runs correctly. Click the eye symbol at the top of the screen and select Configure Preview. Change the preview size to 20 and click Run Preview. You may observe the preliminary output below the canvas. Finally, let's run this pipeline as a job. Go up and select Check-in. You may specify the commit message as My Data Pivoting Pipeline. Select Publish. Click Save and create new job. You may also specify a description and job tags if needed. Keep the rest of the settings as default. Select Start and Monitor Job. Monitor the job status at the top of the screen. Once it turns inactive, that means that the job has finished and we can check the result. To query the output, you'll need to go back to the Snowflake platform and proceed to the worksheet you've been working on. Now let's check the final output. To do so, run the query to see all the fields and values from the newly created aggregated total sales table. Observe the pivoted data that was aggregated the way we specified it, as well as the addition of new columns for the total aggregated sales by month. There you have it. In just a few steps, we have successfully built a Snowflake pipeline that pivots data for aggregation. Thanks for watching. Now it's your turn to try.